Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. Do not move your father into our house. I am Evan, 36, and my mouth outran caution. Sarah's hands froze on the hallway bin like a trigger. She lifted one bag and walked past me without blinking. The kids watched from the stairs, waiting for someone to flinch. She set the bag by the door and zipped her coat. "Then we are leaving tonight," her voice barely above a drill. My throat tightened, but I kept my feet planted. "Leaving where?" My voice hit the wall and bounced back. She held the keys, daring me to argue in front of them. Shoes on, she didn't look up the stairs again. Two small bodies shifted and scrambled because orders mean safety. I moved to block the door, but not enough. Her shoulder touched mine and I felt the brake. The lock turned and my decision felt smaller than air. The car started and rolled away before I could text. I typed a long message, then erased everything twice. Unknown number buzzed before my second try finished blinking. "Tomorrow works for the move," no name attached. I tasted metal and understood the trap was already sprung. I called back and reached a voicemail with nothing recorded. My finger hovered for another attempt, then stopped on instinct. She rejected my call and returned a clean line. "We are at my sister's thing tonight." The period at the end hit like a stamp. I pulled a chair and sat because standing felt theatrical. My palms shook and I pinned them to my thighs. The house sounded newly rented and ready for inspection. I pictured a truck nosing into our driveway tomorrow. I saw my kids lifting boxes they never chose. I grabbed the calendar on the fridge and scanned squares. A bright block read "delivery window" because euphemisms hide landmines. No address listed and no names either. Only a time range that matched the text. Someone had planned my surrender and given me homework. I drove to her sister's because waiting bred stupid stories. A neighbor watered silence near the entry like it was routine. "Try after 9, his shrug came with bored certainty. I sat in the car and counted the minutes badly. The steering wheel felt like a test I could fail. 9:10, Sarah walked down with her jaw locked tight. "You nodded last week when I told you." Her eyes didn't blink. I searched my memory and found static where details should live. I heard the word "nodded" replaying like a small verdict. My chest warmed with anger I could not spend. "Your dad needs an actual plan before he gets a room." He stared over my shoulder as if measuring exits. "He has nowhere else," each word clipped like a receipt. "He has you." My voice surprised me with its weight. She flinched once, then pulled her coat closer like armor. Another buzz, same number, "truck at 10 tomorrow." I held the screen up and watched her face set. She stepped back as if the phone carried heat. "Let them unload." Her hands trembled, then went still. I understood she had placed every piece already. I went home and gathered documents that actually matter. Numbers give courage when feelings eat the oxygen fast. One envelope shouted "final notice" and made my stomach tilt. Her father owed money that could drag us underwater. This was not charity, this was a fuse already hissing. I called the number again because silence favors bullies. A man answered with a cheer I had not earned. "Great, you're up." He called me by name too quickly. "We will use the garage at first," words stubby and triumphant. I did not agree, my voice hit concrete and held. Warning, the truck snorted at the curb like it belonged. I stood on the driveway with my arms steady enough. "Not today." The foreman paused and checked his clipboard anyway. Sarah pulled in with the kids staring through glass. She climbed out and nodded toward the ramp like a command. "I will call for trespass if you start." My finger hovered. A mover backed down and glanced at Sarah for permission. Her mouth tightened and she tapped a message fast. I saw the kids' faces fall like tethered balloons. I held my ground because losing here meant losing everything. "Send them away for now." Her voice finally cracked. The truck pulled off and the air felt thinner. She gathered the kids again and avoided my eyes completely. "We are staying with my sister until you decide." She drove off and left the sentence in my yard. Inside, I staged a counter that did not feel heroic. Short-term room near the clinic, 30 days, clear rules. No nightly chaos for the kids during school. We cover costs if he follows the plan. I rehearsed the lines and heard where I might break. When I called Sarah, I kept my tone flat and slow. "I found a room with checks and nurses, no extra sugar. We set conditions for any future move, 3 simple points. Medical schedule debt plan 90-day review. The silence stretched long enough to threaten the whole bridge. Dad will push, a small laugh that carried warning. I will push back, I surprised. Both of us with certainty. If he crosses lines, he leaves that night, no edits. We protect the kids first, I kept my voice level. She exhaled like a diver and I felt a door shift. Her phone chimed through the line and I pictured the text. I will cancel the truck, the words landed with grit. We were not safe yet, only less doomed. I stared at our front door and imagined a knock. I could already hear it coming through my bones. Knuckles hit the door before sunrise and jolted me upright. I saw his outline through the glass and felt my jaw lock. He lifted a duffel and smirked like paperwork was optional. Ride to the facility, he said, tapping the bag twice. I opened just enough to block him with my shoulder. Sarah's text arrived while he shifted his weight on the step. Already downstairs, her message read, short and clipped. She pulled up with the kids belted behind her. They stared straight ahead and avoided my eyes. He tugged the handle once more like he owned it. We load after check-in, I said, keeping the doorway narrow. No extras until we sign the agreement, I added. He glanced at Sarah, testing if I still had a lane. She kept her gaze on me and did not answer. That silence told me the rules were holding for now. He tried a grin and lifted the duffel higher. Just clothes, he said, voice too casual to be true. I pressed a palm to the bag and felt hard edges. Leave it, I said and pointed to the porch. He dropped it with a thud that sounded like a dare. We drove in 2 cars with a tight gap. He trailed me so close my mirrors filled with his bumper. Each light felt like a coin toss that I could lose. I kept the speed steady because rash choices feed chaos. He honked once and laughed when I didn't react. The intake desk had 3 forms and a payment terminal. A nurse watched us the way referees watch elbows. 30 days prepaid, she said and slid a clipboard. I paid without flinching because hesitation invites pressure. He whistled low and counted the zeros out loud. Visitors between 6 and 8, the nurse continued, tone firm. No alcohol and no unauthorized nights away, she added. He signed slower than necessary and underlined his name twice. I initialed the conditions and held my copy tight. Sarah read every line and traced the dates with a finger. He leaned close and spoke for my ear alone. I'll prove I'm fine and rejoin the family soon. His breath was steady and his eyes stayed on mine. Follow the plan, I answered and let the moment hang. Behind us a door buzzed and cut the tension clean. We walked him to his room while staff watched carefully. He tried to pocket the visitor badge like a souvenir. A nurse took it back with a quick flick. He smiled and clasped his hands like we were joking. I saw calculation, not warmth, and filed it away. In the hallway, he tried another angle with Sarah. Bring the grandchildren tonight, he said, voice syrupy and bright. They have school, I said before she could soften. They will come this weekend if rules stay solid. He studied my face and updated whatever scoreboard he kept. Back in the lobby, a clerk waved us over discreetly. There is an outstanding clinic balance from last winter, she said. She slid a discreet printout towards Sarah with careful hands. Her eyes widened and then narrowed like a decision locked. We will not cover old charges, I said cold and clear. He stepped out behind us and heard the last line. That bill is a mistake, he said with a casual shrug. Handle it with the office, I replied, keeping focus forward. He tried to follow us out to the parking lot. A staffer blocked him gently and nodded me on. I popped Sarah's trunk and handed her the house keys. Swap backpacks after dinner, I said, keeping my tone level. She tucked the keys away and looked toward the exit. He is going to push again by tonight, she murmured. Then we hold again, I answered and shut the trunk. On the way home, I checked the porch for surprises. The duffel was gone and the lock had fresh scratches. My stomach tightened and my hands went cold and steady. I took photos with timestamps because proof beats outrage. Somebody would claim confusion later, and I wanted receipts. The phone rang before I finished the second angle. Unknown number again, crisp voice, no greeting at all. Delivery rescheduled to afternoon at your address, the voice said. Wrong address, I replied and read the facility's name. A short pause followed, then a clipped confirmation that felt temporary. I called Sarah and kept the words efficient and spare. Someone changed a drop to our home mid-morning, I said. I will wait outside and refuse anything not approved. Take the kids to practice and keep your ringer high. I heard her breath hold, then a quiet agreement landed. At 11:30, a van rolled up without markings. Two men climbed out and looked for a signature fast. "Where is this head?" I asked, standing between them and entry. "Spare room prepaid by family contact," the taller one said. "Return it," I answered and pointed down the street. He tried to place a small appliance on the curb. "Leave nothing," I said and lifted it back to him. "Final attempt," he tried, flashing a handwritten slip. I tore the copy in half and gave both pieces back. They drove away slowly and filmed me as they left. 15 minutes later, my email pinged with a fresh invoice. The amount matched the item I had just pushed away. The note referred to an authorization using my last 4 digits. I stared at the screen and felt the floor tilt. Someone had used information I never shared with him. I called the bank and froze the suspect card instantly. Then I set alerts that pinged me for every charge. Next, I called the facility and added a passcode. No changes allowed without that code on speaker. The nurse thanked me and added a note in bold. At school pickup, the kids climbed in and looked relieved. "Grandpa called Mom and asked for Saturday," my son said. "He promised a surprise if we visit early," he added. I felt a chill that sharpened rather than froze me. "We visit with staff present," I said and watched the mirror. That night, Sarah parked across the street and walked over. We stood on the sidewalk and kept our voices low. "He tried to authorize deliveries with your number," I said. She closed her eyes and let that sink in hard. "Then we add a second layer," she said and nodded. We filed a fraud report and flagged the porch scratches. The officer took notes and photographed without commentary. He asked 2 pointed questions and left with a card. No promises, only a case number and a blank expression. I liked the emptiness because it meant nothing was assumed. At 8 sharp, a call came from the facility supervisor. "Attempted discharge request appeared under your account," the supervisor said. "Another code is now required for any leave," they added. I thanked them and stared at the ceiling until it blurred. He had tried to check himself out before day 1 ended. I texted Sarah a single line and waited for dots. "He is escalating faster than we thought." Her reply arrived after a long breath I could feel. "Then we escalate too, and we keep the kids out." I understood the fight had just shifted to a cleaner field. Before midnight, a final message buzzed through like a last shot. "You cannot keep them from me forever," the text read. I saved it with the others and backed it up twice. Fear sat beside resolve and waited for my next move. Tomorrow I would bring a lawyer into the room. The attorney opened a folder and slid me a template. "Emergency boundaries," he said, tapping the heading with one knuckle. "Use this if anyone tries end runs around consent." I signed where he pointed and felt my pulse ease. He looked up once and warned me the clock was loud. We called the facility together on speaker so nothing drifted. "New contact tree," I read and spelled each name carefully. "No door releases without both codes," he added from the chair. The supervisor confirmed and typed fast enough to reassure me. I wrote the time down because memory gets slippery under stress. My phone vibrated twice as we packed the forms away. A short clip showed my driveway with a timestamp. Her father's friend approached the side gate and tried a latch. He failed and scanned the camera like he felt watched. The attorney raised an eyebrow and asked if I recognized him. "Yes," I said and forwarded the file to his inbox. "Send this to the officer from last night," he said. "Add the footage log in your written note." I did it right there so I wouldn't stall. We agreed I would not answer unfamiliar calls today. I headed straight to the school and checked in fast. The receptionist handed me a visitor sticker and lowered her voice. "A man asked for release times earlier," she whispered. She slid a sticky note with a hastily written number. I took it and felt heat crawl behind my ears. "Please flag our file with a hold," I said. "Only listed adults for pickup, no exceptions." She nodded and typed slowly so I could follow. A red banner appeared on her screen like a barrier. For once the system moved with me, not against me. At dismissal, my daughter ran out with a sealed envelope. "Coach wants you to sign this tonight," she said. I glanced at the letterhead and saw travel terms. Overnight tournament 2 towns away with parent chaperones. I realized exactly where a reckless grandfather would aim next. Back home, I packed a small go bag for the kids. Only essentials that mattered for quick moves and nights away. I placed it by the door and checked the bolt. Then I called Sarah and kept my tone steady. We need a shared phrase for help, I said, not asking. She suggested a line we never use in normal talk. Blue folder, she offered, and waited for my reaction. Blue folder means pick up now, I replied. Blue folder plus 3 dots means police too. We repeated it until it felt automatic under pressure. The facility rang at 5 with a clipped update. Unauthorized visitor attempted to sign out the patient, they said. The visitor claimed a family emergency and used your surname. Security denied and documented the license plate with witnesses. I thanked them and asked for a copy for our file. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a new message. Bring the kids or I walk out, the text read. I stared at it and felt something straighten inside. I sent back 2 words and a screenshot of the rules. He switched to calling over and over without breaks. I went outside and paced the sidewalk with my earpiece in. The attorney joined the call and listened to the voicemail. Save everything, he said, voice level like a metronome. Patterns matter when judges look at danger. He drafted a letter to the clinic while I watched the street. A rideshare stopped near our curb and idled too long. The driver leaned and peered at my house like it was his. I approached and kept my hands visible at my sides. Pick up for Sarah, he asked, checking his phone nervously. Wrong address, I said, and he accelerated like he agreed. At dinner time, we met in the parking lot by the diner. She kept her hood up and scanned behind me twice. Weekend visit only with staff in the room, I said. 15 minutes supervised, no gifts, no side trips. She lifted her chin and asked what happens if he refuses. Then he meets silence, I answered, and I meant it. We keep receipts, we keep codes, we keep doors closed. She looked down and rubbed her wrist with her thumb. I will stand in front of him if he crowds you. I believed her because fear had finally taught both of us. Back at the house, an email pinged from the clinic. They attached the attempted discharge form with a forged signature. The scrawl looked almost like mine if you squinted. I sent 3 prior signatures for comparison and a short note. The supervisor replied with thanks and a promise to escalate. At 8, the doorbell rang and I checked the camera. No one on the step and no car in sight. Then a voice through the intercom, soft and too friendly. Neighbor here with a parcel for Sarah, the voice said. I didn't bite because predators always test the fence first. I called Sarah and kept the line open until the lull. Blue folder, she said, then exhaled and caught herself. No dots, she added, steadying her breath. Her sister's car was late from the grocery store. I grabbed my keys and drove the back streets fast. She met me by the curb with the kids bundled tight. Someone circled the block twice, she said, and glanced around. We moved them into my car with quick checks and buckles. Her phone vibrated again and she showed me the sender. Facility supervisor asked us to come in the morning. On the way home, my son asked a small question. Are we in trouble? He whispered, watching my mirror. We are in a plan, I answered and felt it land. Plans are not comfort, but they beat guessing. He nodded once and stared out like a lookout. I tucked them in and set the house to alert mode. Then I sat on the floor beside the door and listened. Street noise rose and fell while my breathing found rhythm. Every creak turned into a decision point in my head. I waited for the next move and promised not to blink. At midnight, a final buzz rattled the table by my knee. A photo appeared of our mailbox with a fresh dent. No caption and no number to reply to. I forwarded it to the attorney with a 3-word line. Tomorrow we play offense and end the games. I walked into the clinic office and placed the texts down. The administrator read them once and called security without fuss. We tighten access immediately, he said, tapping the screen twice. A fresh badge protocol printed with our code at the top. I signed for it while listening for footsteps outside the door. A counselor joined us with a clipboard and a wary glance. He requested discharge at noon, she said, checking her notes. We denied it based on last night's behavior. She asked for our weekend plan in exact minutes. I gave it to her like a script I'd practiced. We entered the common room and found him pacing tight circles. He spotted us and spread his arms like a host. I'm ready to come home today, he said, voice syrupy. Sarah didn't move and I kept my back straight. The counselor stepped between us and asked him to sit. 15 minutes Saturday with staff present, I said, calm but loud. No presents, no detours, no hallway sidebars. He laughed once and studied my face for a crack. He asked Sarah to be reasonable while rubbing his temple. She folded her arms and looked at the clock instead. He switched tactics and winced like pain had just arrived. Chest tightness, he muttered, reaching for the call button. A nurse strode in and clipped a monitor on him. Numbers rolled, steady and unimpressive, across the small screen. He peeked at us to see if we flinched. The monitor beeped normal and the nurse nodded once. Hydration and rest, she said, brisk and unbothered. He sagged theatrically and asked for private time with family. The counselor shook her head and pointed at the sign. He swallowed his annoyance and settled for a glare. We returned to the front desk to finalize boundaries. The administrator added a visitor blacklist with 2 extra names. I handed over camera stills from my driveway last night. He attached them to the chart and flagged the account. Document everything, he reminded, although my pockets already knew. My phone buzzed while we were still signing copies. A voicemail from the school district waited without transcript. I stepped into the hall and hit play with my thumb. A male voice asked if we authorized a midday pickup. He used my last name and claimed to be an uncle. I walked back in and showed the counselor the call. She dialed the principal on speaker and introduced herself. Release to parents only, the principal agreed, voice crisp. She also mentioned a stranger loitering near the gym doors. I felt the timeline condense and my focus sharp and hard. We drove straight to the campus and checked in at once. A custodian pointed to the man near the trophy case. Baseball cap, cheap jacket, eyes scanning for an opening. I stepped into his line of sight and waved casually. He turned his shoulder and drifted toward the exit. A patrol car rolled past as if summoned by thought. I flagged it and showed the incident number and photos. The officer approached the man and asked for his ID. The man stumbled through a name I recognized from footage. He received a trespass warning while staring holes through me. Back at the house, a white SUV idled by the curb. The driver lifted a clipboard and practiced a courteous smile. Welfare check for minors, she announced, pen already poised. Anonymous complaint received this morning through the hotline. I invited her inside and produced the signed clinic letters. She walked the rooms quickly and asked 3 sharp questions. Food, sleep, supervised visits, I answered without decoration. She photographed the porch scratches and my printed log. Her expression stayed neutral, and that worked in my favor. She left a card and promised to update the file. The attorney called as I locked the door behind her. I filed for a temporary protective order and notice, he said. Also a structured parenting schedule with exchange locations. I listened to the steps and felt my shoulders settle. He booked a hearing for Tuesday and asked me to breathe. Sarah arrived after practice and parked 2 houses away. We stood by the mailbox dent and kept our voices low. He tried the uncle trick at the school, I said. Her face drained, then set like cooling glass. We shift exchanges to the station lobby, she answered. The kids came out for homework check and a quick snack. Our daughter asked if Grandpa was sick or just mad. Both, I said, and waited for the recoil. She nodded once and returned to the worksheet in silence. Honesty costs less than false comfort once you start paying. At 8, the clinic called with a fresh complication. He had phoned a pastor to argue for compassionate release. The pastor requested a meeting with the family on Sunday. I asked for the request in writing and a staff witness. No private appeals, no hallway talks, no corner deals. We prepared a short list for that conversation tomorrow. Debt plan signed by him and verified by the counselor. Weekly therapy proof sent directly to the administrator. No access to our address under any circumstance. Violation equals immediate transfer to a stricter program. My phone flashed again with a new unknown number. Bring the kids or I tell them everything, the text read. I saved it and forwarded to the case officer. Then I powered down for 10 minutes and drank water. Panic wants speed, strategy wants oxygen. I chose strategy. Before bed, I moved the go bag to the car trunk. I checked the camera angles and tested the porch chime. Then I sent Sarah the code phrase one more time. We repeated the meaning until it felt stamped in muscle. Every drill is boring right until it saves you. At midnight, the intercom lit with a gentle chime. Courier signature needed, a voice whispered like we were friends. I watched through the lens and saw no uniform at all. Another press, then a long, patient silence on the step. I let it stretch until the footsteps finally retreated. I lay down on the rug and stared at the ceiling. The hearing date pulsed in my mind like a beacon. If we win, he loses leverage and changes tactics. If we slip, he moves in by loophole before dawn. I closed my eyes and counted breaths until morning ambushed me. I arrived early and requested the conference room with windows. Staff scanned my badge and verified the dual codes first. The pastor walked in with careful steps and a neutral smile. He greeted the counselor and kept a courteous distance from me. I kept the folder shut and waited for his angle. Her father entered with brisk energy and eyes that tested. He sat opposite us and folded his hands very neatly. I want a dignified transition back home, he began smoothly. The pastor nodded once and mentioned compassion and family unity. I kept my voice flat so it couldn't be twisted. This meeting sets conditions, I said, addressing the counselor first. Any breach moves him to a stricter program immediately. The counselor wrote the line on the form without commentary. Her father held his breath the way negotiators sometimes do. I did not fill the silence because pressure loves quiet. The pastor asked for a supervised prayer time with grandchildren. I counted 3 beats and asked about structure and oversight. The counselor proposed a brief circle in the day room. Staff in the doorway and no objects passed around. I agreed and marked the date with the session length. He leaned back and tried a softer register for Sarah. Forgiveness is healthy, he said with both palms open. She stared at the clock and adjusted her sleeve once. Accountability first, she answered, each word paced and clear. I watched him downgrade his expectations right there. During the break, I stepped into the hallway with the administrator. He showed me a sheet with a new visitor flag. 2 more names had attempted to book times under aliases. I circled them with his pen and requested a block. He executed it while I stood there to prevent slippage. We resumed and the counselor handed him the agreement. He scanned quickly and stalled at the money clause. You want me on automatic payments, he scoffed, chin raised. Your signature today sets weekly drafts, I replied cleanly. He swallowed and signed because the room left him no exit. The pastor closed with a short prayer that stayed noncommittal. I kept my head up and eyes on the counselor. She collected every paper before anyone could pocket something. Her father smiled for the staff as if we were reconciled. I watched the smile drop when the doorknob clicked. Outside, my phone lit with 2 alerts in quick succession. Bank attempted charge denied and card frozen as instructed. Unknown number tried again and left a single heavy word. Coward, the text arrived with a grainy porch selfie. I forwarded both to the case officer with the timestamp. We drove to the station for a trial exchange drill. The lobby guard made us rehearse entry and exit paths. He showed where cameras cover blind angles near the benches. I appreciated the blunt walkthrough and noted the markers. Sarah kept nodding as if memorizing steps before a test. Back at home, I found a certified letter wedged under the mat. A summons naming me in a petty debt dispute. A loan I never opened with his signature pasted over mine. I photographed each page and filed another fraud complaint. I felt anger sharpen into careful focus that cut fast. The attorney answered on the first ring and redirected my plan. We add this to Tuesday's packet, he said crisp. Petition for stay-away orders extends to financial accounts. He scheduled a notary for tonight and asked for copies. I scanned everything and watched the uploads crawl with irritating patience. Evening brought the supervised visit at the facility day room. The kids walked in with measured steps and eyes on staff. Their grandfather greeted them with a practiced chuckle and open arms. They offered quick side hugs and looked back to us. The counselor started a timer and stood within earshot. He produced 2 small cards from his pocket, faces down. Prizes for my favorite team, he grinned, eyebrows lifted. The counselor moved closer and asked to inspect them. They were prepaid gift cards with handwritten amounts on tape. The counselor collected them and placed them on her desk. Spend time, not money, I said, keeping my tone steady. He tried a story about the old ballpark for nostalgia. Our daughter listened, then asked about his clinic tasks. What did you work on today? She asked softly. He blinked and glanced toward the pastor in the hall. Gratitude list, he muttered, eyes skittering toward the clock. The counselor's pen moved across her clipboard with tidy strokes. Our son asked if the list included no lying. A muscle in the old man's cheek twitched and reset. I watched him push that question aside with a smile. The timer chirped and the counselor lifted her hand politely. Wrap it up, she announced, voice calm and firm. He reached for a last squeeze that lingered a beat long. I stepped into his line of reach and broke it. He let go and thanked the staff through clenched teeth. In the parking lot, Sarah leaned against the door and shivered. "He will escalate before Tuesday," she said, low and certain. "We harden the schedule and keep the station exchange." I agreed and texted the guard our confirmed times. Then I tightened the home automation and double-checked notifications. At 9, a delivery truck stopped again and idled mid-block. The driver viewed our address on a tablet and frowned. I approached with the camera visible and my hands clear. "Return to sender," I said, pointing to the screen. He reversed slowly and never looked back as he left. 30 minutes later, a different van rolled in with tinted windows. 2 men hopped out and checked house numbers without speaking. I phoned the non-emergency line and read our case number. A patrol car swung the corner before the men split. They wandered off while pretending to search for someone else. The officer walked up and studied the porch damage again. He measured the new marks and compared them to last photos. "This looks like prying with a flat tool," he observed. "Record the time and consider a temporary camera relocation." I thanked him and moved the lens to cover the side gate. Midnight brought the call I hoped would not land tonight. Clinic supervisor again with a clipped tone and a problem. "Patient attempted to leave by the laundry exit," they reported. Security redirected him to his room without physical restraint. I asked for a formal write-up and they sent it immediately. I sent the incident to the attorney with a single line. "Add to Tuesday packet and request that transfer option." He replied within minutes with 2 attachments and marching orders. Draft declaration for me and a separate one for Sarah. We wrote them on our phones to avoid delay. Morning came with another trick from someone using my surname. The school nurse received a call to pre-clear midday medicine. They logged the attempt and flagged the student records tighter. I drove over and thanked them for the quick defense. Trust must be built when pressure tries to crack routines. At lunch, we met the pastor in the lobby again. He wanted to verify Sunday's visit for his notes. I explained the gift card issue and the exit stunt. He frowned and said he would counsel humility and patience. His tone had shifted from neutral to cautious after today. Afternoon brought a conference call with the case officer and principal. We arranged a password the kids could share if pressed. A simple phrase they can say if someone corners them. If it appears, staff call us and hold the children. We practiced it during dinner until it sounded ordinary. Our neighbor texted a shaky video of the curb at dusk. A sedan rolled by slow enough to count breaths. The passenger filmed our mailbox with deliberate aim and poise. I saved the clip and replied with a short thanks. He asked if we wanted his door camera on overnight. I left the house lights on a standard timer for noise. No surprises, just steady signals that the place was active. I moved 2 chairs to block the back entrance inside. Not a barricade, just friction that buys seconds during confusion. Small changes change outcomes when tests keep arriving. At 8, a new number called with a polished greeting. "Hospital billing," the voice announced, and asked for card details. I requested a callback number and a last verified invoice. The line clicked and dropped before I finished my sentence. I added the attempt to our log and pushed it forward. Sarah arrived with the kids for a quick homework swap. We used the station lobby as planned for the handoff. The guard watched as we traded bags and short updates. Our daughter asked if the visit would be shorter next time. I told her we would reduce minutes if rules bend again. Back at my place, the porch camera pinged twice. A figure in a hoodie peered into the side window. I hit the panic routine and let the siren rip. The figure bolted and a neighbor's light popped on. Then my phone buzzed with a fresh message from him. "Police do not scare me," the text read without punctuation. I forwarded it to the detective with our case number. He replied that he would run the cell metadata tomorrow. I pictured a map narrowing while he stared at a screen. Small progress, but progress that tightens the field. Sunday night bled into Monday with restless pacing between rooms. I drafted bullet points for court and trimmed excess words. The shape of the argument became clean and hard. Protect minors, maintain structured care, stop financial access. Each point backed by timestamps and staff notes ready. At dawn, the attorney messaged with a sharper plan. "Emergency motion to modify visitation until compliance," his text read. "We add all documented attempts in the forged debts." He told me to print 3 sets and meet him early. I packed them with the bodycam stills from the officers. On the way to the clinic for signature copies, my phone chimed. The supervisor had escalated him to a closer observation wing. Temporary placement pending the hearing, the message declared succinctly. I parked and exhaled for the first time all week. Then I braced because pressure hates losing ground. We met Sarah at the entrance and checked in briskly. She squeezed my hand once before letting it drop. "We are still a team," she said, not asking permission. I nodded and felt the truth land heavy and right. Next stop was court, and then whatever came after that noise. Outside, a rideshare idled near the curb with tinted glass. The driver watched us and then checked his phone quickly. I walked over and asked if he needed a name. He muttered one that matched the pastor, then looked confused. I waved the pastor over and watched the car pull away. The counselor found us in the lobby with fresh paperwork. "Incident report signed," she said, handing me a copy. "Recommendation for continued supervision attached for the judge." Her eyes tracked the door as if expecting a surge. I thanked her and placed the paper on top of the stack. We left the building and the air felt charged and tight. A sedan swung the corner and slowed beside us. Her father stared from the back seat with clenched jaw. The driver accelerated when I raised my phone to film. I captured the plates and the timestamp before they vanished. I sent the clip to the attorney with 2 words. "Got proximity adding," he replied with a thumbs-up symbol. Sarah leaned against the car and looked at me hard. "We finished this Tuesday," she said, voice steady and low. I nodded and locked eyes with the courthouse in my mind. That night I set alarms for morning and double-checked folders. The kid slept at her sister's with an early pickup plan. I laid the packet on the table and rehearsed answers. Each response short and precise, no drift, no apology. The next chapter would be written under oath and lights. The bailiff called our case and my chest went still. We stood, files tight in our hands like seatbelts. Across the aisle he adjusted his tie and stared holes. His attorney whispered fast while sliding a thin folder. The judge lifted a pen and told us to begin. Our lawyer started with the forged loan and porch footage. He lined up timestamps and the denied charges on screen. I watched the judge's eyes track each clip carefully. No commentary from the bench, just notes and a frown. The room breathed in one rhythm that did not forgive. My turn came and I stepped to the microphone slowly. "Code phrases for safety were needed last week," I said. "Delivery crews were redirected to our doorstep repeatedly." I described the bogus welfare call and the school stunt. I stopped after facts because drama would only muddy things. He rose and smoothed his jacket with deliberate calm. "I'm being shut out by vindictive family members," he started smoothly. He glanced at Sarah with wounded disbelief and dry eyes. His lawyer flashed a sympathetic look at the bench. The judge raised a palm and asked for actual proof. The center's counselor appeared on video with a steady tone. She summarized the attempted laundry exit and the gift cards. She also confirmed the visitor blacklist and the alias bookings. Her face remained neutral while she read from her log. The judge nodded once and requested the written report immediately. Sarah took the stand and stayed steady despite shaking hands. She described the coded call and the mailbox strike. She asked for no contact at school grounds or practices. Her voice held when she said the kids were scared. The judge wrote faster, then lifted his gaze to the clock. Opposing counsel tried a different lane with practiced ease. "Isn't this a family misunderstanding?" he asked the room softly. "Wouldn't an apology and temporary stay resolve tensions?" The judge looked at the forged signature and the plate photo. "Counselor, address the fraud or move on," she said flatly. The pastor stepped forward and requested a word from the gallery. The judge allowed 2 minutes and nothing more generous. He urged mercy and emphasized structured reunification over time. He did not argue against safeguards or the paper trail. The judge thanked him and returned her attention to the files. Ruling came harder and cleaner than I expected that morning. Protective order granted with a defined perimeter around home and schools. Financial restraints approved to block account access and new authorizations. Supervised visits limited to the center with staff present only. Any violation triggers immediate transport to a higher control unit. He exhaled loudly and muttered something about traps and betrayal. 2 deputies shifted their stance and watched his hands carefully. His attorney touched his sleeve and guided him backward. The judge set a review in 90 days and adjourned. The gavel landed and the hallway swallowed our case number. Outside the courtroom, the detective met us with a folder. Phone records mapped to the delivery calls, he said simply. Source was a prepaid line tied to his friend. He promised to forward the report to the prosecutor's desk. I thanked him and logged the case note on my phone. We exited through the side door to avoid the crowd. A sedan rolled past with tinted glass and familiar plates. I lifted my camera without hiding what I was doing. The car sped off and clipped a curb while turning. Small proof, but proof that patterns rarely stop on command. At the center, the lead nurse scanned the order carefully. She added a bright banner to his chart while nodding. No holiday exceptions without judicial sign-off, she concluded firmly. Any call to minors is routed through staff only. I exhaled through my nose and felt the knot loosen. That afternoon, we met the principal in her office. She placed copies of the order in both student files. The security team now has your password protocol, she said. Release requires photo confirmation from you or Sarah. I looked at the hallway and pictured our kids walking safe. We chose the precinct atrium for future exchanges and handoffs. The desk sergeant walked us through the process without flourish. He showed the camera angles that record every step precisely. He offered a bench near the door for quick exits. I hovered there for a beat and let the feeling anchor. Evening brought one final text from the familiar burner. Court tricks mean nothing, the message read without punctuation. I saved it and sent it to the detective immediately. Then I powered the phone off for 10 clean minutes. Silence is a muscle that grows when you let it. The center scheduled a family session for the next day. He refused the slot and requested unsupervised time instead. The counselor denied and attached the court order again. He hung up and left a voicemail dripping with bravado. We archived it and forwarded the audio to the file. Sarah and I met in the kitchen and counted moves. We enforce everything or it fails, I said, voice slow. We do not explain the order to him anymore. She agreed and slid the house key across the table. We sat across from each other until the decision landed. We drafted a simple plan for emergencies and school nights. If blue folder rings, I drive without questions asked. If 3 dots follow, I call the precinct first. No editing under pressure, no improvising under fear. We repeated it out loud until it felt like habit. Our neighbor knocked and passed me a memory stick quietly. His camera caught the sedan circling last night at 9. The passenger filmed our window while pretending to tie a shoe. I copied the file and thanked him with my eyes. He nodded once and promised to watch the block again. The pastor called at noon, requesting a brief hallway talk. I met him at the center entrance and kept distance. He offered to mediate a written apology for the kids. I asked if the apology would include full accountability. He paused, then agreed to request those exact words. The apology came on letterhead with short sentences and dates. He owned the forged signature and the disguised deliveries. He acknowledged the school attempt and the mailbox strike. He promised to follow the program until the 90-day review. I read it twice and filed it without celebration or anger. That weekend, our kids saw him through the glass again. A staffer stood 6 feet away and tracked every movement. He kept his hands visible and answered direct questions only. Our son asked if there would be more surprises. He shook his head and looked at the floor for once. The timer chirped and the staffer raised a palm cleanly. He backed away and mouthed, "See you next week," carefully. No gifts, no cards, no off-script detours attempted. We walked to the parking lot in quiet formation. I felt relief arrive like a slow tide rather than fireworks. On Monday, the detective called with a measured update. Prepaid line tied to an address near the old auto shop. Warrants would take time, but the map was closing. He asked us to maintain the reporting rhythm without fatigue. We agreed because consistency beats swagger every single time. The center moved him to a stricter wing for a spell. Compliance would bring him back to the common room slowly. Noncompliance would reroute him farther from the street. The counselor explained the latter and stared at the clock. I understood we had one time, not peace, and that mattered. Sarah and I met the attorney for final signatures. He filed the financial restraint orders with 3 institutions. He confirmed the fraud complaints were bundled with the hearing notes. He handed us a thin packet labeled with our names. "You hold the line," he said, and closed his briefcase. That night I checked the stoop and the window sensors. Everything held and the logs were clean for once. I placed the court copy inside the door at eye level. Not decoration, just a reminder with teeth and dates. I wanted every knock to meet that paper first. Near midnight, a single knock landed, soft and deliberate. I watched the camera and saw only the empty rail. No motion beyond the sidewalk, no idling car at all. I waited a long minute with my heartbeat counting. Then I turned the deadbolt and let the silence stand. Morning arrived and the house felt like hours again. Not safe forever, but safer than last week's maze. The kids packed lunches and checked their own passwords. Sarah clipped a note on the fridge with exchange times. We both smiled without saying what that smile cost. I drove them to school and walked them to the door. Our daughter squeezed my hand and didn't ask anything. Our son looked at the officer by the office flag. He nodded once like a sentry who finally trusts the wall. I turned back to the car and felt my shoulders drop. The center scheduled the next visit for a shorter window. He accepted without bargaining and stayed within the rails. We stayed outside the door and heard small talk only. No pressure, no sideways pitches, no sudden shifts. The counselor signed the log and met my eyes with approval. In the evening, the pastor texted about a group session. I answered with 3 conditions and a firm location. He replied with a simple yes and a time. No flourishes, no vague words, no PR. I sure to soften. I recognized progress when conversation finally respected boundaries. Weeks later, the review date sat on the calendar like a post. I kept the packet updated with each entry and clip. I stopped pacing at windows and started running in the mornings. My energy went to planning instead of guessing. Control returned in pieces and felt earned, not borrowed. On the 90th day, we walked into the same courtroom. The judge skimmed the compliance report and the stable schedule. She extended the order with minor tweaks for school holidays. She praised the use of supervised contact and firm documentation. Then she looked at me and asked if my home felt secure. It feels defended, I answered, and my voice didn't shake. The judge nodded and signed the line with quick strokes. Gavel tapped, deputies relaxed, hallway opened to regular noise. We stepped into it and found our own pace again. Outside, I touched the doorframe of our car and kept my hand there a second longer.